Hello and welcome to Informally Formal. Shams Mahmud is in the boards of many companies and institutions, including being the Vice President of Bangladesh Philippine Chamber of Commerce and Industry. She's the Managing Director of Shasha Denims, immediate past President of Dhaka Chamber of Commerce and Industry. Welcome back to you, Shams.
Thank you so much, Mr. Hakim, for having me here.
Absolutely. Always a pleasure, Shams. It's always a pleasure talking to you. Shams, you're a veteran of the RMG textile landscape in Bangladesh. So today's session, I would like to go into basically want to know the general health of that space in Bangladesh as we are still in the midst of the pandemic. So just give me an overall assessment. Over to you, Shams.
Thank you, Mr. Hakim. So in general, what we have noticed is that the exports are increasing, but it's increasing in only particularly the knit sector. Now, what happened, there were a lot of entrepreneurs who made the jump going for value addition. Like we had entrepreneurs stitching, besides the traditional items of like jerseys and t-shirts, polo shirts, like denim trousers, formal trousers. What the pandemic has done is that the subsectors, the demand has fallen, but in the knit industry for the basic items like polo shirts, knitwear, they have increased. So we are seeing a huge, export to the US market, and also we have to take into account that there was transfer payment happening in the US where the government directly gave money to people's bank accounts. So that also enabled them to have more purchasing power. So we saw the revenge buying, we call it the revenge buying system, but it's mostly towards these subsectors like polo shirts, t-shirts, something you wear at home, instead of like formal suits. So overall, the industry, some particular subsectors, we see the turnaround is taking place, but overall it's down. And also if we look across the board, the exports are increasing, true, but the unit price per item is decreasing. So this is something we should be concerned about from now.
Let's just go into what do you suppose in Bangladesh, in order for us, we still keep talking about getting to the $50 billion mark. When do you suppose, in your opinion, Bangladesh could hit $50 billion in garments export?
So to answer this question, I have to take you back, the background also, because if we see that in 2008, during the financial crisis, what happened? We were apprehensive that orders in Bangladesh would fall. But what we saw was a boom of orders. Why? The reason being was high street brands, to reduce their cost of production, shifted a significant amount of orders from high cost of manufacturing countries, like from Europe, from Turkey, from Pakistan, from China, from Vietnam to Bangladesh for their own sustainability. We have to keep in mind the interest rate at the bank in Bangladesh was about from 14% to 18%. So in 2008, when the bank interest rate was 14% to 18%, we took hold of that situation. We turned around the industry in such a way that from $12 billion in a decade's time, our export almost, it crossed 30 billion. So in just 10 years, with high banking interest, the industry boomed. Why? Proper government policies were in place which enabled this. Now, similarly, during COVID, we had the same expectation that, when this thing will happen, a lot of orders will shift from China, a lot of orders will shift from Europe, and the boom will happen. And also now in Bangladesh, historically, we have a very low cost of borrowing. It's like 9% is a cap. So we can also, so it's from 6 to 9% the average rate of borrowing. In spite of this, why isn't investment taking place? And as an entrepreneur, different entrepreneurs have different mindsets, but me personally, I think the best time to invest is when all bets are against you. Because if in this landscape, if I can create a business model where I'm breaking even, things can only get better. Things will get better. So this is the right time to invest. But why isn't it happening? There must be some reasons, and there are reasons. The taxation policy of the government, there needs to be massive reforms, number one. Number two, the government has taken a very good initiative on establishing special economic zones all around Bangladesh to look for FDI. FDI will come. Maybe it will take 2 years, 3 years, 5 years, but it will come. But to take the short-term advantage of especially business moving away from Myanmar, shifting from China, there's a law in Bangladesh now. If I go for business expansion, if I'm asking for a new gas connection allocation, the government will deny me because they want a proper planned way of industries now, new industries coming up, where only economic units inside the economic zones will get gas connection, but outside of that, they will not. New connections will not be given. Now, for a foreign company to come to Bangladesh, they need to invest a large amount of money, and it will take some time. There are a lot of steps they have to go through. Then building that industry takes like 2 years for the construction, laying of machinery and everything. By the time they go into production, it's 3 years. But if the government would have allowed existing industries new gas connections for joint ventures, people who are going for joint ventures, then we would have a lot of companies moving away from China, from Myanmar, tying up with a local company who's doing good and transferring the technology, doing the value addition in a much limited investment. So we haven't taken the scope for that. We haven't grasped it yet. But the way we see the industry picking up, with the vaccination programs rolling out and everything, within the next 2 to 3 years, we should hit the $50 billion. It's possible, but we need proper policy support from the government, as we had gotten from the same government 10 years back.
I wanted to ask you, Bangladesh was a decision that was made many years back when the textile industry was taking a hold. We went into natural fiber instead of man-made fiber, and the world has since slowly moved into more, man-made fiber. So that is hurting Bangladesh. Would you agree with me? And then are there any initiatives afoot to shift into more man-made fiber or a combination of natural and man-made fiber?
We see in the latest budget which was passed recently, over there was a tax duty was imposed on man-made fiber importation. It's mostly more technical. Man-made fibers are still 100%, almost 100% imported from China, from Pakistan, India. Locally, we do have some, but there are problems with this industry. Like, this is the future. We have to invest in more spinning plants, need to invest in man-made fibers, because with the European Union having new regulations come in this decade, where they discourage the use of using cotton and more focusing on eco-friendly yarn, which is recycled yarn. So government of Bangladesh needs to have a policy on this. So for example, one of the biggest drawbacks we have in Bangladesh is segregation of waste. Like in garments industry, what we do is that, all the small cut pieces, small rags we see, we stoop it on top of each other. We just pile it up and then we send it to quilt industry and local industries. But this is a very important material for the man-made fiber component, regenerated polyester, one of the products that you were talking about. So what happens is that you reuse this small waste as we see it, you mix it with polyester, which is a petroleum-based product, and you make yarn. So what's happening when you use this is that you're saving water at the end of the day. You're recycling the waste product, and so your carbon footprint, your environment footprint is very minimal. So, and this is where the industry is heading. We are using ocean plastics, recycled from the ocean, the plastics. We are breaking them down and using them instead of like polyester also to make it more environmentally friendly. As such, in Bangladesh, we do not have any policies regarding this. So what usually happens now is that because of the duty structure, it's not economically viable for us to go into investment of this at the moment, because one of this part is like export, the other is the local demand. But when you're trying to sell locally, you have to pay the duty. And that's a barrier. So government needs to look into this, because this is the future. This is where all the industries will focus. Right.
I'm going to switch gears with you, Shams, altogether and ask you about just one particular thing about this 21-22 budget. And that is the reduction of the corporate taxes. We are still one of the highest in terms of corporate income tax in the region. And if you were to compare with Vietnam, there is no comparison, because Vietnam, they were significantly lower than us. And in this new fiscal year, they're looking to significantly reduce it even further. Your comments on that?
It was a welcome move that this was done because we have been asking for this for a long time. But this had to be linked to job creation and job retention. Industries who had retained jobs, industry who had created jobs during this last fiscal year, only they should have been able to avail this service. Because to be fair, like you had industries where people were laid off, but other factories did not do the same thing. They still continued business. So, it should have been a reward to good practices. But overall, it's a good indication that the government is thinking, and especially during this COVID time, it is really important. Like, number one, I have to make money to pay corporate tax. Now, if I'm not making any money, if I'm making a loss, the issue of corporate tax does not come. But the problem is the advance tax, which defeats the purpose. Because after paying the advance tax, if my company is not making money after the fiscal year, then I don't get refunded. I mean, there's a process, but we never get refunded. So how do you reconcile that? So there were a lot of issues, but it's a good start. It's a good thing that happened. And we hope the government will look into this further.
Right. Shams, you're absolutely right. Very quickly, in under a minute or two, Shams, very quickly, broad stroke, some of the ideas that will take our industry forward to the $50 billion mark. Just 1, 2, 3. What would some of the policy reform actions that you would like to see, both from a private initiative as well as from the government side?
Number one, innovation has to be, people need to innovate. It needs to be encouraged. We need to think outside the box. As an entrepreneur, you need to think like you want to be a big fish in a small pond instead of a big fish in a big pond. Because when you think like that, you ultimately become a small fish in a big pond, and then you get killed. So we have to change the way we think. We don't need to be the biggest, the largest, the highest. You need to be sustainable. That's what's important from an entrepreneurial side of view, from the industry perspective. From the government side, in the coming days, especially with COVID in mind, we need further tax breaks or some form of incentive to make us invest. The reforms which needs to be done, because as I mentioned earlier, the interest rates are historically low. So investment, it's the right time to go for investment. And we need to grasp this chance while we have it in front of us.
Shams, once again, what a pleasure it's been. Always a pleasure talking to you. Stay safe with your family. Hope we get over this pandemic, this terrible times that we're all going through. I would like to thank our audience and urge them to stay safe as well. I'll catch you in the next session. God bless you. Bye-bye.